Hello everyone, welcome to Mean Machine Talks. I am MeanMachineDean, and as you can see, we've had a bit of an upgrade around here. Look at the wonderful interface that we now have. It has been retrospectively upgraded. A big thank you to AVX Studios, who has massively helped me make this look decent. I think is what we'll agree to what it was previously. As you can see, it is looking lovely. Now, before I introduce the gentleman that side of the screen, I'm just going to take a small piece of time just to say a huge thank you to the NHS and all of the workers who are basically keeping us safe and keeping everything going in the country. So a big thank you to you guys. You guys rock. Into other things, we also have, as per usual, some of the triggers that you can do in chat, which are at the bottom of the screen. So if you would like to ask said gentleman, or learn a little bit about said gentleman, some questions, or learn a little bit about him, the commands are at the bottom, which are !podguest and !podquestion. You will be presented with some links, and it will tell you what to do. It's pretty simple. Anyway, on to the podcast. I have the wonderful gentleman sat, well, he's not sat literally next to me, social distancing and all that, but he is to the left of the screen. It is Craig from 80s Nostalgia has joined me today. So hello, Craig. How are you today, sir?
I am wonderful. Good to finally chat to another human this week.
It is good. It is not quite as good as face to face, but it's as good as you're going to get, unfortunately, in pixel form. So, and thank you very much to for coming on the podcast. And I have just said that in chat has all of your details. So if you would like to follow Craig, you can look at his wonderful website and also his Twitter, which is normally full of nostalgic, wonderful memories. Which now comes into my next thing. What I normally do is I hand over a fake microphone and I pass it along like that. And I'm hoping that you're going to grab it to your left hand. Reach it out. Go on.
Okay.
There we go. He's going. He's got it. He's got the mic. And now what I'm going to get you to do? Oh, that's good.
We give me chew it.
That'll do. To be fair, that's a good nostalgic choice. What I normally do is get my guests to do a quick 30 seconds to a minute's introduction about who you are, what you do, and some interesting cool facts. Go.
Oh, fact-wise, I'm a bit on those. I'm Craig. I run 80snostalgia.com. It's the longest online 80s website in the UK. Started in 1999. Got Twitter, got Facebook groups, got a YouTube channel. Got quite a lot of things. Got interviews, got a podcast. And I just tweet a lot of random nostalgic stuff.
So if you are a fan of Twitter, this guy is the man to follow. But no, thank you very much for giving me your time. I really appreciate it. So what I normally do is do a historical back look and kind of go through your timeline through the ages until we get to sort of present time. Pre-corona, but happier times, I probably should say. So I guess the biggest question, the one that's been sitting on my mind, is why did you pick 80s as your main focus? Is there something specific about that era that you could cling on to?
I didn't actually. I started. My main focus was cartoons. So anything, I was going to make a website of 80s and 70s and 60s cartoons. Every cartoon that had been on the UK, on TV in the UK since the dawn of time. That was my plan. And I made a list of 300 cartoons with a guy at work called Phil. And we compiled this list. I wanted to get all the cartoons and a list of characters from each of the cartoons as well. Have a downloadable theme tune, like a biography, description of every cartoon I could find. So I set up a website called toonlist.co.uk, and that was my focus. And I ended up joining a website called 80snostalgia.com because the guy that ran that had a load of pictures that I wanted to steal from him. And I found him using. I was on Ask Jeeves years ago, just searching for 80s cartoon.
How about that for nostalgia?
Search for 80s cartoon, Ask Jeeves, and I found 80snostalgia.com, and he had everything that I wanted. So I downloaded all his images, and then I emailed him to say, "I've got all your images. Am I okay to use them?" And he emailed back, said, "Yeah, that's fine. You can use them as long as you link to me." So we became friends, and this was about 2001-ish. And over the years, I went to his website so much that I became a moderator in the chat room, the IRC chat room that he had. I became friendly with him online. Never met him in real life. Never spoken to him verbally. But I used his site quite a lot as a resource, and I took stuff from it, and I discussed it, I shared it wherever I could. And in 2005, he gave it to me. Just this guy that I'd never met just emailed me out of the blue and said, I'm moving to Singapore. I can't afford to pay for a UK server while I'm not going to be in the country. Do you want it? And I was like, yeah, sure. Go on, why not? So I've had it for 15 years, and I've maintained it, and I've developed it further. But it wasn't actually mine to start with.
Well, that is interesting. That was not, to be honest, that was not what I was expecting you to say. That has caught me completely off guard. Okay, so you got handed the website. What was kind of your first thing? I mean, you must have been a little bit taken back to have, I guess, the whole sole responsibility of the site that you kind of just visited out of curiosity, I assume.
Yeah. Well, it was a massive site. It was used as a reference by the BBC. It had far more traffic per week than my other site was getting per year. It was so popular. This is before YouTube, before any file sharing things. I think it was at the advent of when Kazaa came out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So you could download a theme tune. You could watch intros that he had encoded himself from his VHS recorder onto his PC, and it was a genuine resource of stuff. So when he offered it to me, I was a bit skeptical. How much does he want for it? Because this is worth thousands and thousands of pounds. And he said, no, it's either I let it die and I move to Singapore, or I pay hosting costs for something that I can't maintain and let it fall into disrepair, or I give it to someone who will either let it die or maintain it. So he gave it to me for free, which bonkers. Absolutely bonkers.
So what year was that he handed it over to you, just out of interest?
That was 2005, 2004 maybe, 2005.
Wow, so you've had
one of those two.
So you've had ownership for a good, over a decade at least. So
yeah, when I got to 2010, I realised I had it as long as he'd had it, and then I thought he can't argue, you can get it back anymore. So I started putting different things on it. Yes, I've had it.
You obviously didn't get tempted to then hand the torch over then, so it's like a routine. Every 10 years, it must change hands.
Yeah.
But no, that's that. I really wasn't expecting you to say that. I'm a bit taken back by that. It's really caught me off guard. I mean, I visited the website myself. It clearly has a very long list of nostalgic, not to use a pun, memories. You'll hear that word a lot tonight, unfortunately, so I do apologise. It's not used for pun purposes, I promise you. But yeah, I mean, it is just a fantastic resource for anyone who does want to kind of relive those old memories, and I certainly did earlier today when I was just having a quick browse through. So yeah, I mean, it's fantastic to be able to have a resource of kind of those memories of the era. I think if anything, retro has kind of had this kind of resurgence, and I guess to some degree, in my mind, I mean, probably things like YouTube have kind of, I guess, replaced, as you said, kind of areas of, as a central hub of where people can kind of get nostalgic memories as such. But, to have an actual central hub as you have, specific to a tailored area is fantastic, and it's a great thing to see that you've actually managed to actually maintain that for as long as you have as well. So how is the maintenance of it, just out of interest? Is there a lot of upkeep? Is there a lot of uploads and stuff that you have to maintain?
Originally, yeah, from 2005 to about 2010, I couldn't find a permanent home for it because I didn't have a server. I was paying to use shared hosting, so I would upload the site onto a different host every few months or so, and then I'd get banned because it was that busy, that popular.
Wow.
And I wasn't prepared to pay a few more $100 per month to keep that, to maintain that traffic. So I ended up having to take the videos off, which are the biggest bandwidth killer. And then YouTube started a few years earlier. So I've moved all the videos onto YouTube, and that saved about 3/4 of the bandwidth.
Wow.
And then I could finally afford to actually host it.
Yeah, I guess it's one of those things where I guess initially it was quite cool the fact that someone's handed this responsibility of a site that you knowingly love, but obviously it then suddenly becomes your responsibility to obviously maintain the thing long term. So I guess that transition's quite difficult. Okay, so moving on to other things, you obviously have quite an interesting gaming. I'm just having a look at your T-shirt. That looks like a Mega Drive Sega. There, see,
It is.
eyesight hasn't failed me just yet. So, one other thing that I normally get my guests to answer is, what is your earliest video gaming memory?
It would be 3D Monster Maze on the ZX81.
Wow. I was not expecting you to say that.
I think we had a Binatone or Binatone console with a plug in your TV and play Pong on it. It said it had 8 games on it, but it actually had 4 games on it. Just that there was a 1-player version, a 2-player version of each game, and the class that has 8 games. And I played that, but I think the one that sticks in my mind more is the 3D Monster Maze. Obviously, the ZX81 had no sound to it, and it shouldn't be as scary as it is, but it's genuinely a terrifying game.
I guess it's one of those things, right, where if an element is taken away, I mean, I was kind of thinking about this the other day, where colour is a perfect example, where you could, for instance, read a comic and it be in black and white, but in your mind you colour it. And I guess it's almost the same with games, where if you kind of take away the element of sound, you kind of naturally add that in. And obviously, if it's a horror thing or a horror themed game, then obviously you naturally just add in everything that you've kind of, I guess, your natural fear elements kick in, and everything starts to amalgamate in your mind, and you kind of roll everything up into your own head and kind of build the sound and everything in your own mind. So
that's exactly it. Yeah. And on the game, there's a little bit of text at the bottom of each as you're walking around. And as you're walking through the maze, the text change to say whether you've been spotted or not, and that in itself is enough to. I'm going forward quick. I'm not looking back. It's such a good game. Such a good game.
Yes, I mean, I've not played it myself. Is it a kind of text-based game, or is there kind of like an interface behind it?
No, it's you kind of walking through a very blocky 3D maze, because there's no like sprites or graphics on the ZX81. It's all just kind of ASCII characters or teletext characters.
Sure.
And it's all drawn like that. So the T-Rex coming towards you, or coming towards you, I should say.
Oh, I have heard of this game. Yes.
It was really weird ASCII characters in the shape of a T-Rex.
I know the game you're on about now. As soon as you said that, now I remember exactly the game you're on about. Yeah, I know the one. Yeah, if anyone does want to try that in chat, don't play it with the lights off. Or don't drink a lot of coffee before you do it anyway, you'll probably just get the jitters anyway. Okay, that's quite cool. So obviously, I mean, you must have been gaming for a good number of years, I think we can safely say.
Yeah.
But out of all the consoles and everything that you've played, what is your pinnacle ultimate console that you've owned?
Dreamcast, without doubt. It's that was the first console I bought that was still in production, because I've always bought old consoles. I bought a 2600, Cyber 2600 in the 90s because I saw it for a £5 and I bought that. But I bought the Dreamcast while it was still in production, while they're still making games for it. And that was my first time I had a console where I could actually get new games. And, you could look forward to games coming out the month after. And things like Shenmue, and I mean, Choo Choo Rocket came with it, and that was a fantastic game.
Oh, it is a brilliant game. It is an absolutely wonderful game, and it's ironic that you said the Dreamcast, because actually, when was it? Last Wednesday, I think, I started to go through some of my back catalogue that I've got sat in a drawer just there, full of games, and I was kind of going through some of the Dreamcast games, and as you start to go through them, you kind of start to think, actually, this actually has a half-decent catalogue of games, and you slowly start to go through them. You're like, How did this fail? Guys, can we find out how this failed, please? Because it shouldn't have failed. It was too good. I mean, I'm an absolute lover of fighting games, and like the Street Fighters and every other beat 'em up that was on the Dreamcast, whether it be Marvel vs. Capcom and the second one that came out, just flawless on that console. I mean, the arcade replication that they managed to do onto the Dreamcast is just second to none, some of the best. And every so often, thanks to a very good friend of mine who actually managed to get me a Dreamcast arcade stick, which I'd been after for ages, playing those games using that just brings a whole new depth of playing games. As there's a fishing rod, which is also a great attachment to have to your Dreamcast, and I actually played that on stream once, and strangely found it very therapeutic. I never thought I would find a fishing game quite therapeutic and infuriating at the same time if you play the time attack mode, because your heart rate jumps up and you get infuriated that a fish hasn't bitten your bait. Like that is the height of intensity that you can get on the Dreamcast if you really try. But yeah, the Dreamcast was a fantastic console, and I think I've said this once before on a podcast. It's one of my saddest memories of it was, most families would go to Blockbuster Video, look at the gaming aisle, and you would see this huge wall of PlayStation, and then you would see a smaller wall for Sega, and you would see Saturn and Dreamcast, and you would see the Saturn cabinet getting smaller and smaller and smaller with each month that passed, and then you were just left with Dreamcast. You went, aha, okay, the Dreamcast, it will power through. This wall will be as big as this PlayStation 1, and slowly you could see the PlayStation wall just encroaching on it until it just completely disappeared, and it was really sad to see, because I remember, I mean, I only owned a Dreamcast. What are we in now? 2019. I would probably say I only started owning a Dreamcast maybe early 2000s. I think I bought it off my cousin, if I remember rightly. And I remember quite vividly going up to these games and picking Shenmue up, going, wow, this looks awesome. Shame I don't have a Dreamcast, putting it back, picking this up, being like, wow, this is awesome. And then years later, I've got a lot of it. So it's funny how things work out. But again, the Dreamcast was such a magnificent console. I still say that the VMU is one of the greatest inventions in gaming history. I love the idea of the VMU. It's just a shame that, again, in fact, I was actually talking to a friend of mine. I was actually saying that one of the best mods that I would love to see, I think it is possible, is actually making a rechargeable VMU unit. So, you don't have to keep changing the bloody watch batteries that are inside of it. So essentially what you do is, as you dock it into the hand controller, it essentially charges off the power of the actual unit itself. So that may be a mod coming soon. We will see. But I mean,
very useful.
Yeah, I mean, I've done a few mods to my Dreamcast. I've got upgraded the fan. I've changed the GDU drive to a GDEMU, so it's like you can take an SD card now, and then added a lovely blue LED to the front of it, because why not? And do you know what? There's still times when you switch it on, you go through the games list, and you just go, do you know what? I haven't played that. You get 10 minutes into it, and you're like, this is brilliant, and then you forget it's a Dreamcast game. You're like, how did this fail? It's a shame, because like I said, it is a fantastic console, and I don't think I mean, it's got a lot of love. There's still a lot of fan club behind it. With a lot of people keep a lot of the Quake 3 Arena servers going. I think there's a Phantasy Star server still kicking around from memory. So yeah, it's almost like it's almost like it's got a second or third chance at becoming what it should have been, just through the power of love. Bad choice of thing there. Was that an 80s song? Was it
Love, Jennifer Rush, I think.
Look at that. See, that's why I've got the 80s guy on. That's why I've got the 80s guy on. Which is a good segue, actually. So, on your website, I mean, I guess for those who haven't visited it, what's the kind of the broad depth of what you cover from the 80s? Is it everything? Is there something specific?
It's mainly 80s TV. There's a big section of reviews, partly written by me and partly written by the original of everything from late 70s cartoons to late 80s TV. It's a big section of toys as well. So everything that I used to own I put on there. There used to be a Spectrum emulator on there that you could just play Spectrum games without downloading them, which is quite cool. But then everywhere started doing it, and Java became the least popular thing to have on a website. So
Yeah.
so nowhere supported it anymore. So I got rid of that.
Do you know what? There
Yeah.
was a website, and I can't remember the name of it. It's just my mind has just gone blank. I want to say something stupid like play free games online or something like that. And it's essentially a repository of ridiculously old games. Like you can play like the old Alone in the Dark on the PC on it.
Oh, wicked.
And like it's all done through the browser. And I was like, this is the bloody best thing ever. I mean, it's not good if you're at work because obviously the chances of you getting caught playing it are quite high. But it's a bloody great idea. It'd be a shame. I think you should get that back. I think I would like to see that Spectrum emulator back. I think that would be a good thing. Maybe we can breed something from the 21st century into it and get rid of Java and replace it with HTML5. There we go.
Still got the emulator. Still got all the games. Might bring it back. Might do that.
There we go. If we want that back in chat, let me know. We will hound Craig to get that back.
Do it.
So I guess you have such an in-depth knowledge of the 80s. What thing or one single thing from the 80s do you think completely encapsulates what it means to be in the 80s?
Oh, the.
Don't say Rubik's Cube.
What a pretty broad question that is.
Don't say Rubik's Cube. It doesn't count.
I was gonna do, but that was on.
You can if you
the
want.
Original logo.
You can if you want.
For the website, that was part of the logo. Probably Pac-Man, although it's late 70s, but it's something that I played throughout the 80s.
It's a timeless classic.
Oh, absolutely. I still play it in any arcade I find it and I play it for an hour or two. I think, yeah, Pac-Man, definitely.
I mean, Pac-Man's such an iconic character. I mean, I haven't done any research to see if it's one of the most recognisable characters from gaming, but I would certainly think it would be in the top 3 if you were to do a search. I mean, most people know who Pac-Man is. I mean, I've been to a few smaller arcades recently with work. Our Christmas night out was in a arcade place, and then we went for a wonderful meal. But the arcade place had more retro stuff in it than modern stuff, which I was a bit taken back by. Although it did have this really weird take on Space Invaders. It was essentially, I'm slightly diverting off here, but there was essentially a Space Invaders unit where you sat in it, so it was 2-player, and you had these kind of like big gun things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was like instead of moving the ship across the bottom, you were the ship shooting at these Space Invaders. And I thought, what a bloody clever idea. And strangely enough, I was kind of just... Well, I think I was playing Time Crisis or something at the time. And as I was looking over, I was like, more people are playing this Space Invaders thing than anything else. And I was like, is it the nostalgia, or is it just the fact that it's the biggest, largest arcade machine I've ever seen? I also looked up at how much it costs, and it's about 30 grand to own one of those. And I was like, ugh, okay, maybe I won't be going out buying one of those. Never mind.
Well, they also do a massive Pac-Man as well. It's about the same sort of size and just one joystick. But it's mainly for getting tickets. It's not for actual playing the game. And I think people want that hit nowadays of getting tickets and getting a prize. Kind of diluting the gaming, I think.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I don't get me wrong, I like to collect tokens and stuff like that, but I mean, a few years ago I used to go to Namco World in London, just next to the London Eye. I think it's a few doors down from the aquarium, if I remember rightly. And it's cool, you know, you go to the basketball things, you shoot a few hoops, you get a few coins and a few tokens, and you think, oh, this is cool. And then you walk up to the counter and go, how much is this worth? And they're like, you might be able to get some chewing gum with this. And it was like, ultimate disappointment. And that's the thing, is like, I don't mind the incentive behind playing games and getting tokens and things like that, but well, tickets, but make it bloody sensible. I mean, I remember a friend of mine had this just bucket, absolute massive bucket of just these tickets, and he went in there and like he walked out with something so mundane, and I was like, for the amount of money that you've probably stuck in these arcade machines and what you've just walked out with just doesn't count. It doesn't match up. And I think the arcade machines are almost catered to obviously give as many tokens as they can based on your score. And like you said, it kind of almost takes away the joy of playing the game for the game, right? I mean, like, you know, it'd be a bit odd playing some of the old retro classics and then all of a sudden you're getting like tokens flying at you. It was like, what the hell's that about? I don't need that. I just want to enjoy. I have paid money to enjoy the thing. Although saying that, I have been on my own personal journey of arcade games, and I've discovered some that I never ever want to play again. That's for sure.
Oh, really? There's quite a lot at Arcade Club that I've had a go. I had a go on every machine on the top floor of Arcade Club in Bury. And there's some really good games up there, but then some that I just couldn't get into. It's a bit of a shame because I always considered myself to be quite an avid retro gamer. But yeah, I do find there's a few games I've not really connected with.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's part of the joy of having events like Play Expo, which I've mentioned before, where, you know, there may be arcade machines that you've never played on. I mean, it was my first time of actually playing the arcade unit for some of the Star Wars games. Yeah, there was just so many different titles that I'd never been able to play, and it was a bit weird because you just stood in front of these arcade machines, you're like, A, they're older than I am I going to break it? And B, it's like, you know, these are iconic things and you've never been able to play them as people originally did in the arcade. So it is a real journey to actually be able to walk up to one of these units and actually sit there and actually play on these things. Someone's actually said in chat that synthesizers would be a good choice as a single object from the 80s.
Yeah, they would. They actually became in use in the mid 70s, but I think you're right. Throughout definitely the early 80s, they were certainly in pretty much everything you have, which is it's just that unique sound, isn't it? That unique sort of, I could listen to synth music endlessly.
Yeah, do you know what? It was one of those eras where I think the music definitely took its next step in kind of technology and where to kind of push music on and upwards. And I think it was probably that first electronic movement to kind of use technology in its own way and then kind of take it from there. So it's a fantastic era, and obviously it is because I'm born in it. And you know, the music is iconic. Everything about the 80s is just brilliant. Whether it be the TV shows, the music, the games, the toys. Actually, the toys is an interesting one. So, I mean, I assume you still have a rather large collection of 80s toys. So, what is your favourite 80s toy?
It's got to be something like Transformers or some sort of handheld game. Do you know, the other week I bought a Game and Watch that I used to own in the late 70s, and I've been looking for it for years. It's called Apple, and if you search online for Apple game, it comes up with loads of games on Apple stores, and you can never actually find this one game that I've been looking for. And it turns out the reason I couldn't find it is because it was a knockoff one. It wasn't that real Game and Watch. So it's called a Game and Time rather than a Game and Watch.
How can we get around this, guys? Let's change the words.
It's close enough, isn't it? So yeah, I got that last week. It's outstanding. All you do is you go left and right and catch apples coming, but it just epitomises the late 70s for me.
Yeah, it's a strange thing where a lot of these handhelds have some sort of memories behind them, and it was quite funny because I spend most of my days trawling through YouTube, and every so often there'll be that one video that sets you off on this kind of journey of thinking about the past. I'm trying to avoid the word nostalgia, but for obvious reasons it would be too much of a play. But it's funny because, like, when I was younger, you know, kind of going to shops like Tandy and Index and stuff like that would sell a lot of these electronic handhelds, and I firmly remember my parents getting me a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles handheld. Not sure if it was the 80s or early 90s, could have been either. It was about that big. It was bloody hench. You had to like hold the thing with two hands, and as a child, I mean, I haven't got massive hands, but they're just bloody like massive thing.
Is it like that shape?
Yeah, it was like a kind of, I don't know, imagine like a surfboard kind of like weird thing. Yeah. And that came to my mind, and I saw it in this YouTube video, and I was like, bloody hell, like that really brought back some memories. And then I also remembered how crap it was as well. So, but then again, you know, like we said, as a kid, you know, if you're playing games, you kind of almost, I don't know, put aside how crap it is because you're kind of using your imagination to kind of improve on what is missing there. But unfortunately, in that case, there's no much audio. The gameplay is horrible, and the handheld actual feeling is bloody terrible as well. So there's not much that your imagination can actually improve on that. Okay, so kind of coming into kind of the modern day. I mean, is there one thing or a few things that you kind of think from the 80s that have kind of had a major influence on modern day life or culture or something like that?
I think most recently, the most recent thing that I bought was a Spectrum, and I've got my Spectrum upstairs still boxed, and I play on that every so often. But just to get a Spectrum Next, which is a HD Spectrum with a memory card, it emulates every type of Spectrum. I had a Spectrum Plus 2.
I've got one set up there, actually.
Excellent. That is my favourite go-to computer, and to have a modern day version of that's Wi-Fi, that you can put a memory card in, you know, HD, it just does everything. It's a genuine dream come true for a retro.
Yeah, the Spectrum Next is it's something I kind of kept an eye on, and unfortunately I never really had a Spectrum as a child, and it's funny because I never really had any interest in the Spectrum Next. Unfortunately, now the more that I've actually seen videos of people playing with their Spectrum Next, I want one badly. And again, it's one of those things where I think there was an interesting. I'm trying to think what the hell it was called. I guess you could call it a Q&A session at Play Expo Blackpool, where there was a line of YouTubers, and Big Boy Barry was presenting it. Yeah. And Big Boy Barry said something that really resonated with me. They were kind of, I think they were having a discussion over whether the Commodore 64 was better than some other computer or whatever. And he said, it doesn't really matter. It depends on what computer you grew up with. That is your favourite one. And that really stuck in my head because it's absolutely true. And I think that's why those who have bought the Spectrum Next, because of their passion, you kind of almost see that. I mean, I saw a guy who was unboxing his Spectrum Next. I think he lived in the US, if I remember correctly, but it was an English guy. He was almost brought to tears when he was unboxing it because he was like, you know, I've waited this long to have another Spectrum in my hand, and here it is. And it was really nice to see that level of, I guess, emotional passion come out into something that you've waited that much time for. You know, as he was playing around with it and kind of remembering how to code things and stuff like that. And I think that's a really nice thing where it gets people back into coding and gets people to kind of do things again. And, you know, we live in such an easy life now where it's like, oh, I want to do something. You click a button, you download it, you watch it, whatever. But, you know, in most cases with the Spectrum, it's actually sitting there and actually setting the damn thing up. So you go through a whole experience before, you know, you actually get to do something. So, I think that's why the Spectrum Next is a really lovely piece. I mean, it looks fantastic. It obviously works brilliantly as well. And it's one of those lovely Kickstarter. Was it Kickstarter? I think it was a Kickstarter.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
One of those lovely Kickstarter stories that's gone from start to finish. That just along the way, you know, every Kickstarter has a little bit of a bumpy road, but to see people actually have that physical box in their hand and to see the level of joy that it actually brought people was just fantastic. And and you have one, damn you.
Yeah. What was really weird, speaking of the nostalgia part of it, is that was a computer I had when I was 8. So I got it in December 1980. I got me 48K. I got 128K plus 2 in 1986. And I played the Spectrum for about a decade. And then I grew up. I became an adult and I had kids and got a job. I know. And then
being an adult sucks.
When I got to 43, I bought the Spectrum Next, or 44, I think. And I've been an adult ever since. And then the minute that Spectrum Next was delivered, we took it off the delivery person who left it on the path and backed away because of all the COVID stuff. They left it on the doorstep, and I brought it in and I put it on the floor. I just sat on my knees in the front room, opening it like I was 10 again. It just instantly no longer an adult. It was just the most bonkers feeling.
That's exactly what I mean about having a specific object that just immediately transfers you back to when you're a kid. I mean, I've told this story a few times before about the first time I ever got my Super Nintendo, and every time I pick that SNES off the shelf, I've still got my original one. Every time I hold that thing in my hand, the amount of memories I have embedded in that is just... I just get transformed back into my younger self, and it's such a weird thing where you can pick up something, whether it's a game or a piece of clothing or even a photo or even a song, which is kind of why it's such a fascinating thing to have something that you can just lean back on. And I mean, as you just said, just taking that delivery and going through that excitement as if you were a child experiencing that for the first time, and then going through that experience again. It's you can't get memories like that, and it's a fantastic thing to be able to experience as well. So on to another random question for you. You obviously have succeeded in living, and you have lived through the 80s. What's your favourite memory from the 80s?
Favourites.
You can have multiples. I will allow you
more than one.
I will allow you that.
God, I don't know. Favourite thing is probably, as boring as this sounds, as repetitive as it sounds, getting a Spectrum was the thing that I got Christmas. I got lied to by my parents on Christmas Day, because they said that I wasn't going to be getting a Spectrum. And as I said before, I had a ZX81 before the Spectrum.
I've actually got one of those sitting on my shelf as well.
And I was told, I came down on Christmas Day, opened the presents were arranged in a certain order, and I opened this little package, and it was a ZX81 game. No, sorry, it was a Spectrum game. Sorry, a Spectrum game, and I didn't have a Spectrum.
Right.
So
I see a problem ahead there.
Yeah. My mum said to me, "Oh, looks like Father Christmas has just brought the wrong type of games for you." Oh, don't worry. So I opened some more, and there were more Spectrum games there. And I was like, "Well, I can't play these on a ZX81." I was hating and frustrated. And I opened the thing at the back, and it was a Spectrum. And that's when I realised I'd been lied to so badly. They'd arranged it so I opened things not get, have the surprise at the end, I should say.
Yeah, I had a similar experience. Well, I mean, it's kind of similar, where my there was a box left in the corner of the room, and it looked the same size as a Super Mario All-Stars Super Nintendo kit. I knew that because I knew the dimensions of that box. And I was wondering what was in it, and it was Christmas Eve, and I kind of went to bed. And I think it was about 11 o'clock at night. I could hear what could only sound like cannons going off, monkeys, explosions, everything. And I'm thinking, what the bloody hell is that? So I crept downstairs and turned the corner, and my dad had taken out my gift, which happened to be a Super Nintendo. And he bought me Donkey Kong Country, into which I then said, "What the hell are you doing?" He then looked blankly at me going, "Well, I'm playing your SNES." And I'm like, "Well, can I have a go?" And he was like, "No, you're going to have to wait until tomorrow." I'm like... Brilliant. So then up I went back upstairs to then try and sleep when I know there's a Super Nintendo downstairs. So yeah, cheers, Dad. Thanks for that.
Parents.
But again, it's memories like that where every time I pick that console off the shelf, there's something that I remember. I've actually got that original copy of Donkey Kong Country in my drawer, and again, every time I pick that up, that single memory comes back. I don't know if that's traumatic or not, but it's a memory nonetheless that has stayed with me. So. So, speaking of Spectrum games, you are quite an avid person of writing text-based adventures. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've written a couple. It was. How did that start? I was looking online, and I'm friends with. I'm in a slightly privileged position in the fact that I've kind of larger than I would expect a number of followers on Twitter. A lot of them are 80s game programmers got a few, different parts of the 80s, but programmers mainly. And I was chatting to, I can't remember his name, but the guy that wrote Professional Adventure Writer, or Paw on the Spectrum. And he said there's an online website where you can write text adventures and then you can export them onto a Spectrum. So I had a look at that, and it's called Adventure. So I had a go at writing. I followed the tutorial that Chris Ainley put online. He's the creator of Adventure. It's like a 45-minute tutorial, and it taught you how to write a 4-room adventure from scratch. You've got directions, you've got a puzzle, you've got a baddie, you've got treasure, you've got every aspect of the text adventure in these 4 rooms. And I went through the tutorial. It took 15 minutes or so for me pausing and typing things, and I really enjoyed doing it. So I wrote my first game was called Adventure in 20 Rooms, which is a multi-level adventure game where you've got to escape from effectively a dungeon that's got a few rooms in it. I won't say how many rooms are in it, but the game is called Adventure in 20 Rooms, which is a bit misleading. So I wrote that, and I really enjoyed the process of finding puzzles. And what I enjoyed most out of it actually was letting my kids play it and letting them find things wrong with it that I hadn't spotted. Because when you write something, you can only do it from your perspective. So, and you might think get pencil, and someone else might write pick up pencil, or obtain pencil, or get pen, or get writing device. All these different permutations for the same command. So I enjoyed that thoroughness of writing that game. And then it came to Play Expo Black the last year, and I wrote a game to coincide with that based on the Norbreck, based on Play Expo. I got Andy Brown from Replay Events permission to use their logo in my and I put all the guests that were appearing at Play Expo in the Play Expo game, and they're all interactive. You could speak to Jeff Minter, you could speak to Gaming Muso, the women of retro gaming were all in there, the Playtronic, Andrew Hewson. They're all interactive. They'll set you quests. You could find Retro Man Cave in the secret area. You could chat to Ian Lee, who was going to be there but didn't manage to get there. So yeah, I wrote that based on the layout of the Norbreck. So if you've ever been to the Norbreck, you know how to play this adventure. You know which direction to go to get to certain areas. So if you go to the talk room, for example, Jim Bagley's in there, and he'll say, "Can you go and get an item from the trading area?" So you know that it's south, west, northeast. You can get to where you. That was fun. That was that got completed by Trista, by Tamara Cade, by Jim. He sent me some feedback on how he did with it. That was a huge thing for me. The fact that I've been playing Jim Bagley's game years, and Jim Bagley wanted to play mine, and he even said if I had a spare PC, I could set it up on his stall and people could play it. It's just like, this is Jim Bagley.
Yeah, I had a weird experience with him actually, because I didn't even know what Jim looked like. So this was my first interaction with him. And I walked past, and I can't remember who it was. I think it may have been Neil from Retro Man Cave. Said, "Oh, and here's Jim Bagley." And I shook his hand, and I suddenly looked at him and went, "Oh, I know who you are." and he looked at me, and I was just looking at him like, and he was like, "You all right?" And then I was like, "Yeah." Like, and he was like, "Do you want to have a chat?" I was like, "Yeah, okay." So we just sat down and started doing stuff. And it was so surreal, because I'm sitting, I'm going, "You are Jim Bagley, aren't you?" He was like, "Yeah, I am." I'm like, "Right, okay, fine." He was like, "You all right?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine, don't worry about it." So yeah, it was a really surreal experience, because I had no idea what he looked like, and all of a sudden I was just presented with Jim in front of me.
Yeah.
So how was the process of writing that adventure story? Is it still available, by the way?
Yeah. I'll put links on Twitter after this. Both of my games. I started working on a third one, but I didn't end up getting very far with that. So, so I'll put a link to the other two on Twitter when we finish.
Okay, awesome. So in chat right now, obviously this is not for you on demand, but the link will be in the description of the podcast. There are some links to Craig's website as well as his Twitter, as he has just mentioned, so make sure you go and give him a follow. I played it and I found it absolutely hysterical, so you did a very good job. The only shame was I think you didn't quite go into the nitty-gritty of how bad the Norbreck is. I have tried to explain to people the uniqueness of the Norbreck. I have described it as Guest House Paradiso if it was set on fire and then napalmed. It's an experience. I think my favourite memory was seeing, I think AVX Studios is still in chat, but we saw a Roundtree's fruit pastel that was on the floor that looked like they had been there since the dawn of time, with a thin layer of mould, and then on top of that was a thin layer of dust. And I was like, that's probably older than this building. So yeah, I found that incredibly interesting. Did you stay at the Norbreck yourself?
Oh, I wouldn't dare. No,
I like that. Good.
I think it's. I live about a 45 minutes drive from it, so I live in between Play Expo Manchester and Play Expo Blackpool.
Right.
So,
okay.
But yeah, from what I heard, well, you know, we have been going to Play Expo Blackpool for every time it's been the last 5 years or so, and it is noticeably quite a bad, dank place. I didn't want to go into how bad I thought it was in the game, because the game was an official thing that Andy
That's a valid comment. I'll give you that.
But Horsenberger did the graphics for it, the teletext guy, and he tried to add in as many awful carpets as possible. So he did a very good job of representing it.
I must say that was the first thing I noticed actually when my journey to Blackpool was an interesting one. Essentially, I got stuck in Preston because the train stations were flooded from Preston all the way to Blackpool. So Stan PC Gaming picked me up from Preston of all places and drove me there. So when we arrived, we didn't come through the main reception area. We came through the back. And I saw the main hall. I could see them setting up because I arrived on a Friday, and I'm thinking, wow, this is an amazing hall. Like, I like this. This is good. All of a sudden, someone said, "Oh, should we go to the bar and get a drink?" And I was like, "Okay." This is quite funny actually. So I went up to the bar, and I'd been up for stupid amounts of hours. I can't remember who was with me now. Two guys who were with me both got pints, and the guy said to me, "What do you want?" And I said, "Do you do coffees?" And he said, "Yeah, what do you want?" And I said, "Well, do you do a cappuccino?" And he went, "We just do coffee." And I'm like, well, in my mind, I'm like, well, why did you bother asking me what you've got on offer if the standard response is just going to be, "We have coffee," which kind of set the tone, because I then took said coffee and then decided to go for a walk, then ended up in the reception, and yeah, that carpet is nostalgic for all the wrong reasons.
It's very much like an 80s cinema.
Yeah,
it's a weird choice of carpet.
Do you know what? That's a fantastic description of it. An 80s cinema. An 80s cinema that has been run down for many decades. So slightly moving over, there have been a couple of questions submitted, so if you do want to submit a question, bear with me, I will put that in chat. Pod question, there is a link there, so if anyone wishes to submit a question, fill out the form on that link, and I get them pop up here next to me. So the first question that's come through is for yourself. Let me just get that. It is from @WithNell Marwood, who you may know from Twitter. He has asked, what is the 1980s worst fashion mistake? I would say Dealey Boppers or the snood.
Do you know what? My sister got a knitting machine when she was 8, and she made so many snoods. It's just there's only so many tubes of wool you can have, I think. God, fashion things probably. It's good. I mean, leg warmers, I suppose. I wouldn't wear them myself anymore. So yeah, leg warmers I'd go with.
So it's a strong shout. I would have gone with the Snood myself, so I think I think it's a strong staple to go with. So Rocksalt9000, who is currently in chat at the moment, has asked a question for yourself, which was, have you used Quill for your text adventures? I'm assuming that's a platform to build stuff off.
It is, yeah. It's very much like Professional Adventure, right? Is it Tim Gilbert's wrote Quill? I think I have used it back in the day. I think it's 1985, 86 that came out. I did have a go at it. I wasn't as into text adventures back then as I am. And I found out last week that with the Spectrum Next, you do get a free copy of Professional Adventure Writer. Support is built in the memory card. So I've used the Quill in decades, but I'm looking to get back into using Paw in the next few weeks.
Okay, that's interesting. So that's quite cool that they actually built that into the Spectrum Next. Obviously, there's I mean, there must be some kind of following, I would assume, to have that much interest in that. So that's a nice touch that they actually built that in. I like that. Good job, team at Spectrum Next. You get a thumbs up for that. Just one of the free software you get. I think you get about 20, 30 games or demos on there, but that's one of the full softwares that you get. It's also included a PDF on the memory card, like a tutorial, shows you how to get a game up and running, which is brilliant because you don't get manuals anymore in games. So yeah, looking forward to trying that. You most certainly don't, and in some cases, you don't even get a game anymore if you buy a physical copy. No, Nintendo and Bethesda sort it out. So another question that's coming from Steadysphere, who I believe is still in chat at the moment, has asked, this is a good one. This is a good one. Now we're getting to the meaty question. This scares me. Buy or sell, Terminator or Aliens? Ooh. Do you know what? My friend wanted to record Alien. I think it was Alien off the TV. And he just got a long playing video record. And he had a 1 hour cassette. So he put the video in and did it to long play and press record, thinking he's going to get 2 hours on a 1 hour cassette. But he hadn't pressed the long play button, so he recorded the first hour. The cassette rewound and then recorded the second. But for me, definitely Aliens. I think Aliens is a fantastic film. So you would buy Aliens and sell Terminator? Ooh, that's a strong statement. But to be fair, I think I'll probably agree. I know I'm probably going to get shot down in chat for that, but out of the two, it's probably the ones that stick in my mind. But yes, if you do want to ask another question, as I said, use the !pod question, fill out the link, and I will get them here. So I guess we're coming up to the last 10 minutes. That really has flown by. Yes, yeah. So what's kind of the plans for the website yourself, kind of coming into sort of post-Corona and the future, and kind of what you plan to do with kind of the website and yourself and anything else that you've kind of got going on as well? I would like to get more podcast episodes recorded because I did release a series of podcasts to coincide with the 20th birthday of my website. So they came out in June 29. I don't think I'm going to have anything ready for June 2020 for when it's 21. Wouldn't mind getting some more of those. Managed to get some really good guests on those. The ones I would never have. If the 15-year-old me was looking at what the 45-year-old me was doing, it would have been flawed. Genuinely flawed. Okay, I mean, an idea, maybe a text adventure game for the 21st. Yeah. You find around picking up 80s nostalgia as you go around a maze or something. I don't know. It's an idea. There you go. Yeah, there you go. That's why people come on the podcast, full of ideas, me. I won't copyright that idea, I promise. But no, it might be an idea to do something. I think every year, especially something for a website that's been around as long as yours has, I think should be celebrated. So I think you should definitely do something. I mean, do you think maybe there would be a dedicated website possibly for text adventure games if that already exists? I don't know if that already does. I did set up a section on
that has just my games on it, but I think Chris Ainley, who wrote it, is looking to. He hosts a lot of. It's his software, so I think he also provides hosting for any game to send to him as well, which is such a genuinely good resource. So many good things on there. So yeah, if I do write one, I would definitely email it across to him to host it.
That's cool. I mean, as I said, I think it's one of those untapped areas of gaming. I think it's one of those either you love it or hate it kind of things. I mean, I've never been a fan, but I played yours, and strangely, I don't know if it was the charm of the Norbreck, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But after playing that, it kind of it set off my intrigue, and there almost seems to be this resurgence of making text-based kind of adventure experiences, I guess you could call them. In fact, I saw a brilliant one. Neil from the Retro Man Cave, one of his wonderful followers, has basically made an adventure game all about Neil. I believe one of the things that you get to experience is a cleaning montage. I haven't actually seen the episode yet, but I can just imagine a little pixelated Neil scrubbing something. Or I think the one that's missing is the capacitors montage of just him taking them off and then saying, "I really like capacitors. I'm just going to desolder this off the board. Put this capacitor in." Love you, Neil, by the way. But yeah, that could be the next one. Maybe that's the episode. It's an 80s nostalgia with the best of YouTube and Twitch. There we go. There's the idea.
That could be good.
There we go. See, it all comes out of this podcast. You see how creative we are? It's like a central hub of genius sat right here. This is what happens. Right, another wonderful question has come in, although my iPad is being silly. Go on. Right, so let's see that. Rocksalt, do you want to come run the show, mate? I think you're asking better questions than I am. Rocksalt 9000 asks, what triggered the concept of the guests' interests and the website? So I guess we kind of covered that over earlier, but I guess that may be an interesting thing to wrap up with, was kind of your overall interest of the 80s and kind of the website maintenance.
How do you mean? As in...
Yeah, so I guess what they're getting to is kind of your... And I guess we didn't really quite touch on it. Is kind of your intrigue with the 80s, kind of your level of focus. I mean, most people, for myself, I try and cover myself in a whole broad plethora of different backgrounds and gaming from all over different genres. And I guess at the moment, we kind of touched on earlier the fact that you kind of obtained the website by someone giving it to you. Did you not have an inkling of maybe pushing it out to different genres? Or, was you thinking so... I guess it's one of those responsibilities where you kind of was given something that's 80s related, so you should keep it that way. I guess did you ever have a temptation to kind of move it on to something else?
Do you know what? I own far too many. I'd say around 15. So the 80s one is the main one. That's the one that I was given. But I also own, they're still on Toon List, the cartoon. I don't do anything with it, but I still own the domain. Then every time I get an idea, I will make either a section on an existing website, make a new site just for that thing.
Right.
But I don't think I'll ever branch away from the fundamental part of each website. There'll remain an 80s website, and the blog will remain 80s blog, and all the other ones will remain that topic, I think.
Sure.
It's a bit... When you start combining things, it tends to get a bit diluted, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I think it's one of those things where if you, I guess with most disciplines to some degree, if you hone your skill into one specific area, you become a lot more laser focused on and more... I guess an overall kind of expertise in one particular area, whereas if you kind of, as you said, you go into different areas, you essentially dilute the overall message, and that's why I think it's great that you've kind of got this central hub of just everything 80s that people can kind of go to and then experience and kind of learn to love again of all the things that we've had from yesteryear. So, right, we are nearly at the hour. So, no, I lie. One more question has just come in, so I'm just going to turn off the rest of the responses. So that is it for your questions. Oh, good. Actually, I won't read that out because that is a stupid question, so I'm not going to go with that. So, right, I am going to end the podcast there. So, thank you very much for joining me, and a big thank you to Craig. So, thank you very much for that. It is greatly appreciated to have you on board, and thank you for giving me your time. I in chat will put. Oops, bear with me. Oh, not pod question. Pod guest is the one I'm after. Oh no, how might I spell it correctly as well? Good God, you can see it's been a late evening for me. Right. There we go. So all the details for Craig has just been put in Poltergeist. Yes, I did spell that wrong. So yes, all of the details for Craig has been put into chat now. So please make sure you go and follow him on Twitter, and also make sure you go and give it the 80s nostalgia.com website a look at as well, because it is bloody brilliant. So stay on the line, Craig. We'll have a quick chat as we go off the air. But for everyone else, thank you very, very much for joining me live and for joining Craig. As I said, please make sure you go and follow everything, and I will now terminate the podcast, but if you do wish to watch this on demand, it will be available on YouTube and all other good podcast providers listed below, and a few others as well. Or if you're really interested, you can go to MeanMachineDean.com/podcasts for any more information. So from me and from Craig, have a good evening.
Thank you very much.
No problems at all. Have a good evening and take care. Right, I just need to find the right button. Where is it? Have I got it here? I do have it here. Right, anyway, have a good evening all. Take it easy. MeanMachineDean, signing out.